Okay, so hello peeps. And welcome to the second part of our pre-recorded lecture on the blood sporozoa or your sporozoa. And for this part, we're going to discuss now the disease proper, the Plasmodium causes, and that is your malaria. Alright, so again, malaria ay yung name, diba, derived from yung direct translation kay bad air, because in the early olden times, they thought that the disease is brought about by bad air, gikan sa soil, because ang soil will release once marag matandog ang soil, like pagbungkal or something, or release siya mga bad something sa air, and then dito na ako sa patient or sa people ang disease. But now, of course, it's well established that it's caused by a parasite. So malaria is one of the oldest diseases in the world. So mga times, Egyptian times pa, sa mga pharaohs, even during sa mga early civilizations, and then sa mga colonizers na time, sa mga conquistadors and all that, malaria has played a role in history because of daghang mga diseases na nakos, daghang mga livelihoods, economic effect of this disease to the early generations and early mga civilizations. So it's one of the oldest diseases yun, and it's already claimed lives even sa old age. Now malaria, with exception to tuberculosis, it kills more people than any other communicable disease in the world. So we say communicable diseases, these are diseases that can be transmitted from one person to another, and usually caused by mga pathogens. Okay, parasite, bacteria, fungi, viruses. Alright, so aside from tuberculosis, malaria is the second that kills a lot of people in the world, and it's estimated that about 500 million people worldwide are affected by malaria every year, and annually there are about mga 2.7 million na namatay, 2.7 mga million mamatay. Alright, and usually this mortality majority happens in Africa. Okay, so if you're from Africa, so happens majority in Africa, usually mga children. So more than 90% of the deaths that happen with malaria happens in Africa. Okay, now in the Philippines, para naman natin close to home, recent times, malaria cases nato have been decreasing, so that's good. So in the Philippines, generally or originally, there have been 81 provinces. 81 provinces in the Philippines that are considered endemic. Endemic. So when you say endemic again, it's commonly found in the area. So endemic, 81 provinces in the Philippines were considered to be endemic to malaria. But now, 2019, 50, very good. 50 are declared malaria-free na, so that's really good. According to UH, 2019 ang pinaka-recent ako nakita. 27 ang padulog sa nasa elimination phase. Alright? And 4 are still, 4 na lang ang na-adjust po yung local transmission. Okay? 4 provinces ang na-ay local transmission, and the 4 provinces there, of course, wala nang iba, si Palawan talaga is still number 1. Palawan, you have Occidental Mindoro, you have Sulu, and lastly, Sultan Kudarat. So sila na lang 4 daw ang na mga local transmission of malaria. Okay, so that's really good, That's really just a great development and improvement, from 81 provinces, so mga early 2000s, tagas the cases sa malaria. But as recent years pass by until now, na-decrease na lang to 4. That's a great decrease yun of mga provinces na endemic ng malaria. So that's good. That's we're really good. We're really doing a great job in containing malaria and doing our best to eliminate malaria, hopefully. So these 4 provinces in the Philippines, Palawan, Occidental Mindoro, Sulu, and Sultan Kudarat, according to DOH, 2019 na sila pa dyan na local transmission. So anin na part ng DOH magaling, pero sa other parts, binarak nyo kami, charot, the opacity. Nako, sinasabi talaga. But that's some other chika. Okay, alright. Baka maglagot na ako, ba't pala kayo siya? Okay, alright, sige. Ayan, so that's for malaria in the Philippines, Still, endemic siya to, dito mawalang Palawan. So Palawan talaga, mga case studies, mga exams, mga questions. Basta Palawan. Professor, malaria agad. Ayan, so parang in a way na connect na nato ang Palawan and malaria. So not in a bad way naman, pero in terms of parang disease prevalence and endemicity of the disease, sa Palawan yun, usually ang correlate na to dayon is malaria. Alright? So, until now, no, there have been efforts in the government and also sa DOH siguro to really eliminate. So, by 2030, ang ilahang next goal na po is to really have the country malaria-free. No? So, hopefully by then, ma-achieve na to na. Okay. Pero, so far so good, no? Cases have been decreasing in the Philippines, no, from mga tens, thousands sa early 2000s, karon mga ano na lang, 4,000, 3,000. Still, marami-rami. Pero malaki ang pag-decrease, no? Alright. So, mga deaths po natin usually 1 or 4 na lang, no? But again, we don't say na lang because those are still people, di ba? Pero the number of deaths and cases po are decreasing, so that's good. That's a good thing to note. Okay? Alright, ayan. So that's for mga epidemiology, mga statistics na. Okay. Alright, ayan. Next, when the patient is infected with your mosquito or gibite siya, and then the sporozoids are injected, the patient does not experience immediately symptoms. Because of course, diba, recall sa life cycle, once the sporozoids are injected in the bloodstream, asa man sila first motto, or where do broken hearts go? Where do these sporozoids go? Diba, sa liver. Now, in the liver, they undergo the merozoids and, under replication, diba, mga further development. So, once in the liver, parang it's still, the sporozoids or the parasite is still concealed in the liver. So, they're not yet able to cause any symptoms. Ayan. So, asymptomatic pa lang sila. Because again, the sporozoids are undergoing multiplication, no? So, magaling siya sa multiplication. Charot. M-TAP contestant again. Charot. Okay, so, multiplication ng sporozoids sa liver. Diba? Sa pre-erythrocytic or exo-erythrocytic cycle. Okay. Now, after, of course, once magawas na siya sa liver and mag-infect na sa RBCs, no? And pag rupture sa RBCs, usually dito na magawas ang infection or ang symptoms. And usually symptoms of malaria include anemia, of course, splenomegaly or increased imong spleen, and your classic paroxysm, which is again consists of 3 stages: the cold stage, the fever, and the sweating, profuse sweating. So what happens? Paroxysm is a cycle, So ito i-describe na din. Paroxysms are characteristic bouts of fever and chills resulting from the release of merozoids and toxic waste products from the infected RBCs. So this is a synchronized siya na appearance of these symptoms. Fever, every time, or every specified time kung asa mo gawas ang symptoms or kung when lalabas ang symptoms. Okay? So, this is what we call paroxysm. It's a cycle, It's a characteristic appearance of these symptoms, fever, chills, every after how many days or after every how many hours. Because this is the time when the RBCs are ruptured, merozoids go out, okay? And the toxic waste products brought about by these rupture will initiate these symptoms. Okay? Alright, so cada species, they have their own specified time and specified paroxysm. Okay? Alright. Ayan, sige. Okay. Now, every 36 hours, of course, pinaka-deadly is si Plasmodium falciparum. So, every 36 hours, Every 36 hours, will rupture ang RBCs, Synchronized rupture of RBCs and the release of merozoids. And then also the production of these symptoms, fever, chills, etc. Okay. Now, every 14 hours, of course, the benign tertian, your Plasmodium ovale and Plasmodium vivax. And lastly, every 72 hours, your quartan malaria or Plasmodium malariae. Now, what do you say by tertian, quartan? So, for tertian, erase. Okay, erase. So for tertian, when you say tertian, the fever happens every 48 hours or every second day, So example, sa Monday, ang patient nag-fever, alright? So mukhang 2 days after, so Tuesday, walay fever, alright? Pagka Wednesday, nag-fever na po. So what happens is, ang fever na siya sa first day and na siya sa third day if you mo siyang i-count, okay? Pero ang cycle, it happens every 48 hours, okay? So kaya na i-change para yung malito. So every 48 hours, di ba ang cycle, alright? So first day, nagka-fever ang patient. So kapag 48 hours, bubalik ang fever or dito mo go back ang fever. So first day, second, third, ayan. So sa third day, nagka-fever also ang patient. So 2 days, di ba? Tama, 48 hours from the first day na nagka-fever, imuhang cycle. Pero on the third day, dito nagawa sa fever, that's why it's called tertian. Okay? Tertian. Diba? Tertian. Ayan. Now, for quartan, of course, every 72 hours ang imong cycle. So, Monday, ka-fever ka. Tuesday, Wednesday, of course, wala fever. Pagka-Thursday na ka, magka-fever ka po. So, no fever, sorry. And then fever. So, pag-counting mo, ang imong fever is on the first day and on the fourth, di ba? So, that's why it's called quartan. Gets? So, 72 hours. Every 72 hours na cycle. So, from the first day na nagka-fever ka, another count ka 3 days or 72 hours. So, Tuesday, Wednesday, pagka-Thursday, dito na po bumalik, no? So, pag-counting mo, ana, it's on the fourth day na nagka-fever o so. Okay? So, manang quartan. Alright? So, benign ang imuhang ovale and vivax because wala kayo siya other intense symptoms. Whereas for Plasmodium falciparum, pwede siyang malignant, kaya pwede siyang progress into mga life-threatening symptoms. Pwede na mo appeal sa brain or sa mga kidneys or other organs. Okay? Now, that's for, you have description ha, quartan. para di mo malibog, no? Quartan, tertian, okay? So, basta tertian, every 48 hours ang cycle, what happens sa fever? Ang fever mo balik on the third day, so tertian. And then, ang quartan, every 72 hours ang cycle, so count 3 days from today, kung asa ka nagpa-fever or nag-start ng fever, count 3 days after. So, what happens? Ang fever mo balik mo, fourth day. That's why it's quartan. Okay, alright. Now, the paroxysm, ang paroxysm, it's para siyang, dagan siyang stages, di ba? As mentioned, it has the fever, the hot stage, no? A cold stage, sorry. Fever and then sweat. So, cold stage, of course, with the name itself, ang patient, first niya ma-experience kay bunaw, no? Mag-chill siya, mag-shiver, kana bunaw. Then after pila ka hours, musugod na ang hot stage. Saka na yung fever, taas ka yung fever, pwede mabutog 41 degrees Celsius. Saka kayo init, kayong lawas, imong skin kay hot or medyo warm, no? Fever, init jud, no? Then after mga pila ka hours, bubalik na siya to normal temperature, and that is sweating. Profuse sweating, intense yung pagpaningot, no? Intense sweating, profuse sweating after the hot stage or the fever stage, no? So, inanay ang cycle, inanay ang experience. That's what constitutes a paroxysm. Okay, so muna ma-experience a patient. At first, kay cold pala, magbugnaw siya, mag-rigors, no? Mag-shiver, and then after saka ng fever, 41 degrees Celsius, and then after pila ka hours ito, mubalik, no? Mubalik ay muhang munawag yung fever, your fever goes down, your temperature goes back to normal or subnormal, and then you will have characterized profuse sweating, like intense yun na sweating, and that's a paroxysm. That's what constitutes a paroxysm. Okay? So, ana ma-feel sa patient, di ba? Grabe, intense, no? So, after ana na attack, an attack usually usa ka paroxysm daw may happen 8 to 12 hours or katong symptoms may experience sa patient. Kani mga stages, it can happen 8 to 12 hours, alright? And then after na po, so mahuman na siya karon, so count na po pila ka days, depende sa imong patient, depende sa species. Okay? Now for Plasmodium knowlesi, it's also considered as quotidian, no? Quotidian malaria because it's believed that wala siya, it happens, ang paroxysm happens daily, no? It happens daily for Plasmodium knowlesi, okay? So, quotidian malaria siya, quotidian, okay? Because every day, no? Daily paroxysm, okay? So, your P knowlesi later, when we go to the discussion, it can also be deadly, no? Similar siya old presentation with your P falciparum, if not treated, okay? Alright, so that's for our introduction. Take note of that, okay? Alright. Next, we'll start first with your P. vivax malaria, your benign tertian. No? So for benign tertian, clinical attack at yung experience usually happens 7 to 10 days after infection. So 7 to 10 days ang incubation. In some patients, symptoms may include headache, photophobia, or photosensitivity sa light, no? Muscle aches, anorexia, etc. before the organisms can be detected in the bloodstream. After a few days, at first, kaya wala pa klarong periodicity or wala pa klarong paroxysm. But after pila ka days, may establish on every 48 hours, no? So tertian, no? Every 48 hours. Okay, ayan. Now, over time, the paroxysms become less severe and more irregular, and then cease altogether. So medyo in a way, hindi siya magpadugay, no? Or hindi musevere iyahang paroxysm. Now, splenomegaly, of course, will occur in the first few weeks of infection. But if the splenomegaly or if the disease is treated as early as possible, then the spleen can return to its normal size. Okay, alright, ayan. A secondary or dormant schizophony, of course, as mentioned, P. vivax and P. ovale, diba? They have hypnozoids in the liver which can remain dormant or remain quiet, sleeping stage, no, for pila ka years, and then after pila ka years will reactivate and cause the infection. Okay, so that's typically seen again in your P. vivax and P. ovale. So this characteristic occurrence is known as your relapse. Okay, relapse or true relapse. Okay. So later ito na differentiate, no? Relapse versus recrudescence. Ayan. So this is relapse yun. Okay? So it's seen in P. ovale and P. vivax. Okay. Alright. Now, severe complications uncommon in P. vivax, pero pwede po siya makakause of coma or sudden death if maabot siya sa brain. Okay? But rare lang siya at times. Okay. Now, P. vivax, because again, no, it only infects your reticulocytes. So sa circulating RBCs pa lang, little lang na RBCs ang pwede niya ma-infect. Pwede 2 to 5% lang because not all the time in your blood that you have a lot of reticulocytes. Unless na lang if you have mga hemolytic anemia or bone marrow disorders where there could be reticulocytes, no? Or kidney problems, no? Anemia due to secondary to kidney injury or kidney failure, diba? So possible na ay mga reticulocytes there. But if you're healthy, no, not all the time that you have reticulocytes circulating in your bloodstream. So, ang yan pwede na ma-parasitize is gamay. So therefore, in a way, little amount ng RBC, so therefore the symptoms in a way, it's not that severe. Okay, because the number of RBCs na na-parasitize are quite little lang. Okay, alright, ayan. So that's for P. vivax, malaria. Next for P. ovale malaria, of course, di ba, as I mentioned, the P. vivax, P. ovale, usually sila mag-lungan together, no, or pare-parehas. So for P. ovale, they have the same presentation with your P. vivax, and P. ovale is actually less severe, no? It's less severe to your P. vivax, okay? And it leads to spontaneous recovery, no? So mas good ang prognosis sa P. ovale. Now, also same with your P. vivax, it only infects the younger cells, no, reticulocytes. And P. ovale usually is confined lang to areas in Africa, no? Africa and other sa Southeast Asia or sa Indonesia. Okay, so but mainly confined siya sa Africa. Okay, sa P. ovale. Alright? So seldom din siya makaabot of other areas food. So that's why in a way less na po yung severity. Okay, so P. vivax, P. ovale quite similar in terms of infections. You know, the stages of RBCs na ilang parasitize, their morphological stages, some of their morphological stages quite the same. And of course, the hypnozoids, no? The formation of dormant stages in the liver, your hypnozoids. Okay. And of course, less severe ang P. ovale compared to your P. vivax. Alright. Next, your Plasmodium malariae. Of course, Plasmodium malariae also known as your quartan malaria. So every 72 hours, no longer you have cycle. Okay. Infects, of course, diba, matanda, malariae, older RBCs. So limited lagyan because again, not all of your RBCs in circulating RBCs are not old, no? Some of them are medyo teenager, believe kayo old pa, no? So limited yapon. Same scenario with your P. ovale and P. vivax. Okay. Now incubation period is longer also, 27 to 40 days, and parasites can be found in the bloodstream, and symptoms may resemble those of P. vivax, no? So usually the first 3 na mga Plasmodium species, in a way medyo good na prognosis, no? So but still the same, makapatay na gyapon siya if di natin siya ma-treat as early as possible. Regular periodicity is seen from the very beginning. So meaning, pag sugod pa lang daan sa fever karon, every 72 hours maka-expect yung fever na po. Okay, so it's established already. Hindi siya para sa P. vivax or P. ovale that at the start pwedeng irregular, like nagka-fever siya karon, ugma nag-fever na po, di ba? So irregular siya. But once the irregular periodicity is done sa P. vivax, P. ovale, may establish na every 48 hours na after magka-fever, no, the paroxysms. Okay, alright, ayan, sige. Now, proteinuria, what you have to take note here is P. malariae, common ang proteinuria, especially seen po in children with nephrotic syndrome. So nephrotic syndrome, proteinuria, commonly seen in P. malariae. So it's believed that nephrotic syndrome happens because of deposition, no? Deposition of the antigen-antibody complexes sa kidneys, no? Possible na mga after complications in P. malariae. Okay, so take note, proteinuria, again, the presence of protein sa imong urine, commonly seen with P. malariae, the mga infected patients. And in children, possible ang nephrotic syndrome. Please take note ha, sa P. malariae. Common ang nephrotic syndrome, proteinuria sa P. malariae compared sa other species of Plasmodium. Okay? Alright, ayan. So, proteinuria, AUBF, yes, diba we have the orthostatic proteinuria and the pathogenic one. Alright? So, or the clinical proteinuria. Sana naman, na-remember pa yun. Okay. Alright, so we'll discuss that when we go to your AUPF. Okay, alright. So that's for the Plasmodium, the first mga Plasmodium species. No? Again, based on what we have discussed in a way, parang medyo less naman na deadly in a way. Pero deadly pa rin, no? Kung hindi na to siya ma-treat as soon as possible. Alright? Pero wala pa rin tatalo sa Alaska. Walang tatalo sa Plasmodium falciparum. Ayan, which is again your malignant tertian malaria. Alright, so we continue now with your Plasmodium falciparum malaria or malignant tertian malaria. So, ako na siyang ikutin na years para mas klaro. Kaya I feel like if ako siya i-clip, hindi siya klaro. But anyway, sige na lang. Ayan, so this is your, again, the malignant tertian malaria or your Plasmodium falciparum. Now, onset of the attack or yung symptoms will appear after about mga 8 to 12 days after infection, and then napacheck 3 to 4 days after na medyo vague ang symptoms. Usually, malaria at the start of the infection, the symptoms are not specific, no? So, the patient will experience fever, will experience the usual, no? That pwede diarrhea po, no? At times, so it's not specific. So, as the disease progresses, dito na medyo magka-specific or mas magkaklaro if it's really malaria or not. Okay, so muna, at the start, medyo baka na challenges in diagnosis, alright? And it's really important for malaria that we diagnose it as early as possible. Okay, but anyway, alright, ayan. So for Plasmodium falciparum, true relapses from the liver do not occur because again, no, there is, P. falciparum do not have the hypnozoites, diba? Minsan na ganito na hypnozoites, we have P. ovale and P. vivax. Okay. Now, recrudescences are also rare. Okay, so again, we'll discuss that. Ato na lang i-differentiate ang duha karon. So when you say relapse, relapse happens, di ba? Relapse happens if, let's say, a patient has already been treated with malaria. Okay, now, naayo na yun siya, no? The patient recovered from malaria. But, after how many years, di balik ang infection? Because of hypnozoites or the dormant stages in the liver. Okay, so that's relapse. So we say relapse is primarily due to the hypnozoites, okay, sa dormant stages sa liver. Again, commonly seen lang with P. vivax or P. ovale. Okay, so the patient really natambalan na siya malaria, na okay na siya from malaria, naka-recover na yun. Okay, that's relapse. Now for recrudescence, when you say recrudescence, recrudescence happens when the malaria was not completely eliminated sa body. Could be wala siya na-eliminate sa iyong immune system or wala siya na-eliminate sa therapy. Okay? It did not get cured, no? It was not cured by the therapy, no? Pero sa bloodstream, it remained undetected for pila ka years. But because again, the RBCs are still infected, no? The malaria parasites are still in the RBCs. Then it could still cause infection after pila ka years or pila na ka months. So that's recrudescence, no? Nagets lang. Relapse, it was really established na ayaw yun siya from malaria. Wala na yun siya na-feel. But then after pila ka years, libalik because of the hypnozoites. Okay, the dormant stages found in the liver. Which is again seen lang in two species, P. vivax and P. ovale. Whereas for recrudescence, okay, the recrudescence happens because the RBCs are still infected by the Plasmodium species that were not eliminated completely by your therapy or immune system. Okay, and because there are still parasites inside the RBCs that were not eliminated, they can now cause infection again. Okay, so once the patient, example, has been treated, no, and parang wala na siya na-feel na symptoms, so ni-stop na ang treatment. And then after pila ka months na po, nibalik. Okay, and that is possible recrudescence. There are still parasites that have survived inside the RBCs, okay, that were not completely eliminated. Okay, alright. Now relapse, true relapse only happens again with P. vivax and P. ovale because they are the ones again that exhibit the hypnozoid stages. For recrudescence, all species can exhibit recrudescences. Okay? Alright. So I hope that gets lang a difference. Okay? So recrudescences can happen in all the species or all species can cause recrudescence. But relapse, true relapse can only happen with P. vivax and P. ovale. Okay, because again, sila ay hypnozoites. Okay, alright. Now, severe or fatal complications of P. falciparum can occur any time of the infections, and it's primarily due to the plugging of the vessels in the internal organs. Ayan. So, na yung mga plugging na mahita po. So, mag-guot sila dito, yes, and ma-plug nila ang blood vessels. Hence, it could lead to damage of the organs and lead to death. Okay. DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, like everywhere na coagulation mahita po inside your body, no? Disseminated. Then, it's a rare complication na. Usually sa mga severe infections na yun of P. falciparum. Okay. Now, very important thing, again, cerebral malaria is commonly seen in this type of Plasmodium species, Plasmodium falciparum yun. But cerebral malaria can occur also in other species. Pero pinaka-common, or where it is most often seen is in Plasmodium falciparum, okay? And that is because of our rosette, wait, may napalitan ako. Wala. Okay, alright. So, it's because of the rosette forming, no? Mag-form sila ng rosette ang mga RBCs infected with P. falciparum. So, what do you mean by rosette, no? The rosette combines or consists of the parasitized RBC, sa center usually, and piyahang ipatapot, no? Or other RBCs, healthy RBCs, will stick to it, okay? Will stick to it, ayan. They're surrounded now by 3 or more uninfected RBCs, okay, ayan. So, cerebral malaria is considered to be the most serious complication and major cause of death among patients infected with P. falciparum. Of course, it involved the brain. Okay. Alright, ayan. Now, oh my gosh, I think medyo pinag-delete na slide. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you have blackwater fever. Okay, blackwater fever. It's infrequent, but there is a history, usually seen in if na history of previous attacks. No? Sudden intravascular hemolysis, which results in dramatic color change in urine. So, in other species under Plasmodium, of course, there are rupture, no? There are still lysis of RBCs. But, recall that in P. ovale, P. vivax, and P. malariae, usually limited number of RBCs lang. So, the production of hemoglobin is not too much, no? It's not that much. But for P. falciparum, since all stages of RBCs can be infected, so kung mag-rupture silang tanan, dagan kayong hemoglobin na ma-produce. Okay? So, it could lead to blackwater fever, no? So your urine is black, no, or too much hemoglobin is expressed to the urine. Okay, so blackwater fever, please take note of that. Ay mga red water fever, di ba na-chicken na to? Kisa nito makakause of black fever lang, black fever. Sige, pakipost ng video tapos i-answer niyo. Dapat check to mo niya kaya natapos na taan niyo. Ano kita ng black fever? See? Leishmania donovani. Don't forget, di ba? Kala-azar, dum-dum fever. Ayan, okay. Alright, kailan ko ano kimra ko kakanta? Sige, ako na lang i-hold. Acute renal failure can also happen even if wala yung blackwater fever na ito. Okay? Lead to tubular necrosis. So, mamatay or matuba ang tissue sa kidneys. Okay, alright. Ayan. So, here's an example of your rosette formation. So, the center there, this one, is the infected one. And the 3 here are the uninfected. So, as you can see here, I think actually na-delete na slide. Oh my gosh. Sige lang, please take note lang sa inyong notes there. I think na-delete na slide ani while I was recording. Sige lang, if humanin siya na pag-record ako, na part, ako nang ibalik na po. Basta, okay? So as you can see, this is the infected RBC, no? And usually the interaction between the infected RBC and the non-parasitized RBC is through the knobs. Ayan, yung mga knobs. Now, these knobs are mga proteins, okay? Proteins that are found on the infected RBCs, okay? And usually, ito yung mga rosettins, no? I think nasa yung notes. Rosettins, HRPs, histidine-rich proteins. Please take note of that. HRP, ito na i-discuss later sa diagnosis plus malaria. So, HRP, histidine-rich proteins, and ito, PFMP1, no? PFEMP1, which is considered to be the most adhesive. So, siya ang pinaka sticky, okay? So, through these knobs, okay, they can cause, okay, they can aggregate, no? Pwede silang magtapot and form a rosette, okay? Ayan, sige. Alright, okay. Oh my gosh, I should put that in. Okay, so, again, di ba, please take note, katong cytoadherence na part, no? Sige lang, so if maman ko record ani, ako nang ibalik ko na slide. Okay, sige. So, please take note lang that your cerebral, your malaria, why is it called deadly? It's because when the parasites get inside the RBCs. The RBCs tend to become sticky. Ayan. So, they become sticky, malose ilahang cytoskeleton, ilahang structural conformation, no? Ilahang parang rigid sila so that they become rigid. So, what happens? They become sticky. Now, this RBCs, because they are sticky, they tend to adhere. Pwede silang mutapot, no? They tend to adhere on the surface of our capillaries. And that is, again, called your cytoadherence. Diba? And cytoadherence is commonly seen, again, in Plasmodium falciparum lang. That's why it can be deadly. So, because of this cytoadherence, it can plug your capillaries. Kaya magtapot sila dito, no? They stick to the sides of your capillaries. Hence, it can block the passage of blood or other blood cells. So, therefore, the organs will not be supplied with the necessary nutrients and oxygen, leading to the damage of the organs. Okay, because there's plugging in the capillaries. No, the other blood cells cannot pass through, especially the RBCs that carry the nutrients. Diba? So, ayan, that's the pathogenesis of your P. falciparum, your cytoadherence. Okay, that's why it can be deadly. That's why it's considered to be the deadliest form of your malaria. Okay, all right, ayan, sige. So next we go down to your Plasmodium knowlesi malaria. Again, Plasmodium knowlesi malaria is considered to be your your quotidian malaria, diba? Quotidian or simian malaria pwede din. Because again, they can be their paroxysms happen daily. Okay, all right. Now again, if a patient comes from Southeast Asia or nasa history of going there, where the parasite is endemic. Alright, and then there are unusual forms or it was diagnosed as P. malariae. Excuse me. Then the doctor must consider also P. knowlesi. Okay, alright, ayan. So because again, the symptoms exhibited by P. knowlesi is quite similar with P. malariae. Alright, ayan. Now patient exhibit chills, minor headaches, and daily low-grade fever. Now overall, infections again can be as severe as your P. falciparum if it's not treated early. Okay, because again, same with P. falciparum, it can infect your other RBCs. Okay, alright. It can infect all stages of RBCs. Alright, okay, ayan. Now, of course, mixed infections, no? Coincident infection, meaning infection of more than one species of malaria is quite common, no? It's again commonly seen among two species, P. falciparum and P. vivax. Okay, so sila yung duha. But if they are infected or if a patient is infected with these two species, it's generally accepted that P. falciparum will predominate over sa P. vivax. Okay? Alright. But their relationship is actually quite suppressive. No? So, in a way, P. falciparum destroys or causes dyserythropoiesis. No? So, iyang i-disrupt ang erythropoiesis. Hence, no reticulocytes will be produced. So, P. vivax cannot infect. Kaya diba, P. vivax loves bata, no? Reticulocytes. Whereas your P. vivax also na competition sa mga other cells and nutrients, which also inhibits P. falciparum. So, in a way, masuppress na ilang relationship, no? Sa mixed infections. Okay, alright. Now, P. ovale can also be seen with other infections with P. falciparum, vivax, and malariae at the same time. But since P. ovale again is really confined or common lang within Africa, it's rare to see P. ovale and other mixed infections outside of Africa. Okay, ayan. Because again, it's common or confined in Africa ang P. ovale. Okay, alright, ayan. Now, detection of mixed infections, as mentioned, is quite difficult because again of different levels of parasitemia. Could be na mas daghan ang P. falciparum compared to P. vivax or the other way around. So, pwedeng ma-misdiagnose ang usa or dili makita ng usa, no? Low organism densities, as mentioned, and confusion also among various morphologic forms, no? There could be overlapping of morphologic forms depending on the sample, depending on the preparation put. So, there could be problems to the examination and to the identification, diba? So, it could pose a problem. Alright, ayan, sige. But if you want to really determine if it's a mixed infection, the best way is through PCR, no, mga molecular techniques, because that would really target genetic material of the two species. So mas ma-differentiate na to ano. Okay? Alright, ayan. Alright, okay, sige. Alright, so that's for our diseases caused by the Plasmodium species. Ayan, so hello. So, nakita na ako na yung slides na ako na-miss, and it's not wala siya na-delete. Sa'yo pero gina akong isugdan guys. Anyway, sorry. So, ito ang first part supposed to be sa Plasmodium falciparum. Alright, again. So, Plasmodium falciparum, ayan. It invades all stages of RBCs as mentioned. So, your infected cells may exceed 50%. And as I Schizophony also happens inside the organs. Okay, so organs yung tirada, no, the RBCs found in the organs. It's not found in the circulating blood. So hence, mas paspas, mas deadly. Okay, after pag-release sa imuhang, or the RBCs inside, once ma-infect, it can already plug the capillaries, diba? Okay, as mentioned na to, diba? It can cause plugging. Okay. Now, ischemia, as mentioned, because na plugging sa capillaries, of course, ischemia, there's no oxygen that is supplied to your organs, which can lead to death, okay, of the organ or damage of the organs. Okay. Alright, ayan. So again, nga nung na ay plugging because your RBCs, again, tend to be sticky, will change yung structure. Hence, pwede siyang plug sa mga capillaries. Okay? Alright, ayan. Okay. Now, RBC membrane, as mentioned, becomes sticky, leading them to adhere to the lining of the capillaries, and that is known as their cytoadherence. Again, and this is due to these proteins, as mentioned, which again constitute your NOMs. Okay, so your roxitins, rifins, histidine-rich proteins, as I mentioned, please take note of that. Ito na i-discuss later. And your Plasmodium F falciparum erythrocyte membrane protein 1, PFEMP1, which is the most adhesive. So siyang pinaka-sticky. Alright. Okay. Now, ayun, tama. So, the RBCs become sticky, no? That's why also in the circulating blood, ang ato na makita are the ring forms and gametocytes or gametocytes, because most of the other stages, your schizones, your merozoites, are in the sticky na RBCs. So therefore, mabilis sa plugging sa capillaries. So they cannot be expressed in the circulating blood. Okay? So that's why ato na makita, no, sa ato ang peripheral blood for P. falciparum are the gametocytes and the ring forms. Okay, so here's an example, electron microscopy, no? Visualization of your RBCs, parasitized RBCs, the one that are black, no? Yung mga gagmay na black. These are the parasitized RBCs inside the capillaries in the brain. So as you can see, crowded kayo sila, congested, which can lead to piling up and plugging or clogging of the capillaries. Okay? So muna siya ako na-miss na part guys sa P. falciparum. Pasensya. Okay? Alright, sige. Now for, so that's all for the diseases, no? Of Plasmodium species. For malaria, the different types of malaria according to species. Okay, alright, okay, so we now go to the diagnosis part of our malaria. How do we diagnose malaria? Of course, the main and the best the best way is of course to the gem-sustained thick and thin blood film. So take note, kung manatani discuss, no, sa atuang introduction, yes. And again, as I mentioned, pila na ka-advanced methods, technologies, and tests have been done. As of now, ang gold standard pa rin natin is di pa rin siya na-ilistan. Sana all. Okay? Gold standard pa rin na to, thick and thin blood films. Okay. Now, of course, about 200 to 300 oil immersion tayo examine. 2 to 300 fields must be examined. One set of negative films is not enough, diba? Never enough. Ano sa question na may enough? Charot. So it's not enough kung one set lang. So it's best to do films or do smears every 36 hours. Okay? Para muna siya yung minimum na to because diba, for P. falciparum every 36 hours siya cycle. Okay. Alright. Now we can use other blood stains such as rights. Okay, pero dyan sa pa rin na to preferred. Anticoagulated blood, diba, as mentioned, we can use it, but again, it's best to perform the slides. Prepare the slides as immediately as possible. Heparin can also be used, pero at that one preferred na anticoagulant. Parasite density usually correlates with disease severity, but peripheral parasitemia doesn't always reflect the number of sequestered organisms or meaning katong nasa solution sa RBCs. Okay? Now, of course, diba, wala na ako na-explain diyan. Splenomegaly happens because, of course, of parasitized RBCs, no? Naghamahitabo. Parasitized RBCs, diba? Example, you have daghang RBCs na parasitize or ni-rupture, so pwede siyang enlarge yung spleen. Because, of course, the spleen, muna yung function niya, diba? To destroy, pitting, and pitting and phagocytizing mga old RBCs, diba? So, na-splenomegaly, daghang kay RBCs na nilize, diba? So, again, I think na pwede i-slide na delete. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Pero nasa yung notes, there's kato mga mechanisms of anemia sa imuhang patients with P. falciparum, no? Yeah, so P. falciparum or so malaria na introduction na part. So, anemia happens, again, because of 1, destruction mismo sa parasite sa RBC. 2, lysis of the RBCs because of antibody na pwedeng mo attack sa mga RBCs. 3 is could be pwedeng sa spleen, no? Splenic na destroy sa mga RBCs. Second, a fourth DI is through the ingestion or consumption of your parasite sa iron, di ba? Sa imong hemoglobin. Okay, and dapat to siya other immune-mediated na anemia yata. So, nato sa yung notes, the iron, na-delete na po na ako siya. I'm so sorry. Okay, nasa yung notes. Okay, ayan, sige. Alright, sige. So, that's for gem sustained. Again, thick and thin blood films, gold standard. Ayan, okay. Alright. Next, again, malaria pigment, di ba? Katong mimozoin could be indicator of parasite biomass, meaning kung asa siya nabutang or like ilan ba ka-parasite na in a way. So, if seen siya in PMNs and monocytes, then it can be associated with severe disease. Kaya napot na siya sa imuhang mga white blood cells. Okay, now for P. vivax and P. ovale, your schizone, mature schizone is the morphological choice of for examination. So, atong lantawan for P. vivax and P. ovale is the mature schizone. Okay? Now for P. malariae, P. malariae kay developing trophozoites and a mature schizone. So nakikipang nakakoding ko din. So P. malariae, most commonly seen nato is the immature schizones and developing trophozoite or itong mga rings nato. Okay? And developing trophs. Okay? And of course, for P. falciparum, as mentioned, ring forms and gametocytes ang pinaka-common na makita. Pero in severe infections, pwede ito makita ang schizones and also the trophozoites, no ban. Okay? But most of the time, ring forms, gametocytes ito makita. Alright, okay. So that's for the thick and thin blood films. Okay. Next, of course, is the microhematocrit centrifugation, QVC method, diba? Again, what is the stain used? Ulit-ulit, acridine orange. Okay? And it stains the DNA of the parasite. Now again, it can use other methods na fluorochrome, si benzo-thiocarboxybutene, as sexual forms of mas stain kaysa sa gametocytes. Okay? Alright. Next, you have antigen detection systems. Ayan, very important. So, antigen detection systems are mga RDTs, rapid diagnostic tests nato, no? Again, antigen detection systems, usually these are mga immunoassays in the form of, again, immunochromatographic kits, no? So, rapid. So, pas yun, no? And we're detecting antigens. So, kinsa man ang mga antigens atong detect? Ayan, number 1, si HRP. Ayan, very important. Please take note, diba? Na-mention sa P. falciparum, si histidine-rich protein 2, again, water-soluble protein produced by your trophozoites and young gametocytes of P. falciparum. Next, another is your PLDH, Plasmodium lactate dehydrogenase. So it's produced by both sexual and asexual stages, and it can distinguish between P. falciparum and non-P. falciparum. So example, P. malariae, P. ovale, and P. vivax, no? So pwede siyang ma-distinguish ang P. falciparum versus katungtulo. But you cannot distinguish, or you cannot use it to distinguish between P. vivax, malariae, and ovale. Ayan, so you cannot distinguish it among the non-P. falciparum species, okay? Because most of them, they have PLDH, okay? Alright, ayan, sige. Okay. And lastly, Plasmodium aldolase. It's an enzyme in the glycolytic pathway of your parasite, expressed by the blood stages of all Plasmodium species. And some of your kits, example Binax now, it uses a pan-malarial antigen. And when you say pan-malarial antigen, it's composed of the Plasmodium aldolase, which is common to all of your Plasmodium species, and the HRP2, which is only seen or common specific to your P. falciparum. Okay, so ang HRP2 yun ang very specific to your P. falciparum. Ang LDH aldolase, the rest of the species have it already. Okay? Alright, ayan. And pan-malarial antigen, again, it's HRP2, which is specific to your P. falciparum lang, and your aldolase, which is common to all the species. Okay? Alright, ayan, CQM. Okay. Because ayun pa mga test kits mga that can detect already P. falciparum and P. vivax. Okay, so P. falciparum, HRP2, P. vivax is imuhang possible aldolase, no? Pero again, HRP2 ang specific, no? Specific for your P. falciparum. Alright. Now, test systems, for those that detect HRP2, please take note of the names, si Malaquick, Parasite F, and ICP Malaria PF. So, take note, mga brands na siya, no? So, nag-endorse tayo dito, live selling ulit. Okay. So, detect HRP2, please take note. Detects PLDH optimal assay. So how do I remember? Optimal, para mas ma-remember na ako, optimal LDH, parang ganun. So that's how I remember. Basta quick parasite F kay HRP2, which is specific yun to P. falciparum. Whereas optimal optimal LDH, ayan, it's for the rest of the species. Okay, alright. So, if positive ang patient with your optimal, it's equivalent to about 100 to 200 parasites per UL of blood. That's the sensitivity of the test. Okay, so if positive siya with optimal, it's equivalent to about 100 to 200 parasites per UL of blood. Okay, and detects aldolase, you have ICT, malaria, PF, PV. So, we're going to say binax now. Okay, so aldolase, ICT, malaria, PF/PV. So, PF, Plasmodium falciparum, PV, Plasmodium vivax. Okay, alright. So that's for the antigen detection systems. Very important, dears, please take note of that. Lumalabas sa boards actually. So like, what is detected by the optimal assay, what is detected by the quick, no? Or HRP2 is detected by, or what kung saan na test, okay? So take note of that. Okay? Alright, ayan. Basta optimal LDH. Optimal LDH. Okay, alright, ayan. So yeah. Next, we go now to the next method, antibody detection. It's not useful because antibodies are not demonstrated or didn't makita during presentation of symptoms. And it could be, there's a difficulty to differentiate previous from acute malarial infection. So it's not routinely used. Next, molecular methods, of course, PCR, very, very sensitive for as low as, for as few as 5 to 10 parasites per UL of blood, ma-detect na niya. Okay, so very, very sensitive. Next, you have your malaria parasite count. Now, it's advised, no, and it's recommended that we quantitate. Okay, we quantitate the amount of malarial parasites found in the sample because in a way, again, as mentioned, diba, the level of parasitemia or iyahang quantitation, the level of parasitemia indicates or correlates with disease severity. Okay, and this malaria parasite count is what we use, and this is performed using your thick films. Okay, and each of the field we count both the parasites that we see and the WBCs that we can see. Okay, alright. Now we count about 200 leukocytes. Now if we see 10 or more parasites after counting 200 leukocytes, then we report that as number of parasites per 200 leukocytes. Okay, but if after 200 leukocytes wala kay 9 or less ang na-count na parasites, we continue counting up to 500 and report the result as the number of parasites counted per 500 leukocytes. Okay? So it's not field it's not field, but leukocytes. Diba? Sa imuhang thick smear, diba? Makita nyo naman mga WBCs na lang. Kaya na-lyse ng RBCs, diba? So, you don't see anymore mga red, mga RBCs. So, WBCs na lang yun. So, mukhang ka, mong i-examine ang whole, no? Ang whole thick smear. At the same time, naka-diff counter. You use a differential counter para maabot kag 200 or 500 pa. Okay? So, pwedeng diff counter, one counter sa differential counters for the malaria parasite na mo nakita. The second counter is for the WBC. Ganun. Okay? So, if maabot kag 200, if the total number of parasites na nakita ni mo diri sa imuhang counter kay greater than 10 or 10 or above, 10 or more, then report that as number of parasites seen per 200 WBCs. But if after 200 leukocytes 9 or less lang, you continue counting up to 500 leukocytes and then report that as number of parasites seen per 500 leukocytes. And then we solve, not solving. We convert the number of parasites per leukocytes to number of parasites per UL using this formula, no? So number of parasites counted over number of leukocytes counted times 8,000, because 8,000 is parang the estimated number of leukocytes in a field, no, or in the thick smear. Yan. So muna siya yung estimated, no? So muna siya yung answer atong solving, and the answer is the number of parasites per UL na. Now for shortcut, of course, if you use 200 leukocytes, pwede mo i-diretso multiply to 40 because na siya, 8,000 divided by 200 is equal to 40. Okay? So, if shortcut, example, number of parasites counted is 105. Now, 105 sa 200 leukocytes. So, times mo dahil ng 40, you have your answer already. Okay? So, 100 na lang, kaya parang na-direction. So, answer is 4,000 parasites per UL. Okay? Now, if 500 leukocytes po, so you can multiply directly by 16 because 8,000 times 500 is 16. Okay? Ayan. So, shortcut way. Alright? Ayan, mga this is how we interpret your level of parasitemia. So as you can see, number of parasites per UL, if 5 to 20 lang, then the parasitemia is quite low, no? Then we have to examine still the same 100 fields of your thick blood film and your thin blood film. Okay, alright. And one set again does not rule out a negative infection. So we need again another step. Now as you go higher, of course, 500,000 again, no? That's 10% of parasitemia lang, 10%, that's equivalent to 500,000 na. Then that's already, we need exchange transfusion na. Kailangan natang tahon itong RBC sa sulod sa patient, kay infected na majority with the Plasmodium species. So we need to get those RBCs and then exchange with new blood cells, no? Because again, that would lead to death na. Okay? So that's how we interpret, no? Ayan. So based on your malaria parasite count from your thick films. Okay. Alright. Ayan. So this is from Garcia. Okay. Alright. Now we go now to natural immunity to malaria. So there are some instances where we have, or humans have genetic alterations in the RBCs. Okay, so RBCs mismo na ay defect. Okay, and these defect, no, it could be a disease, pero for the patient, it can also serve as a protection against malaria. Because na may defect ang imuhang RBCs, then it's incompatible with the survival of your parasite, no? Ayan. So, first is of course, very important, the Duffy A and B negative. Duffy negative na antigens, okay? It is resistant to your vivax and P-Knowlesi. And the Duffy, recall in your BB, no, blood count, diba? Duffy A negative, B negative, where you don't have the Duffy antigens, that's a marker of the African black ring. So sa Africa, usually resistant sila sa P-Vivax and P-Knowlesi. Because again of this alteration or because of this absence ng mga antigens sa ilang RBCs. Okay, next is wala kay MN antigens, you are resistant to P. falciparum merozoites. Okay, so dra pa lang, no? If you don't have the M and N antigens, then the merozoites cannot survive in your RBCs, diba? Okay. Of course, another one, G6PD deficiency, ayan, because of the enzyme G6PD, wala dito sa RBCs, it could take a rule or gamitin ko siya sa imuhang parasite. So if wala kayo G6PD, then hindi sila ka-survive. Aside from that, you have sickle cell anemia and hemoglobin F. Sickle cell anemia, of course, ang imuhang cells daan kay sickle cell. So, dili na siya infect ay mga parasite kay gamay na lang space, no, kay sickle cell. And aside from that, possible po na low oxygen na lang ang makuha, di ba, sa mga sickle cell. So less nutrients, less oxygen for your parasite. So dili siya ka-survive. And hemoglobin F, it can impede or reduce the growth of your P. falciparum. Okay. And please take note, there have been studies of making the malaria vaccine, and one of that is your RTS-AS01, or also known as your Mosquirix. Okay, please take note. The Mosquirix, or again, this is still being studied. There are still a lot of vaccines that have been studied, or that are being made, being created, being researched about, or researched on. Ayan. But this Mosquirix, alright, we use genes of the outer protein of P. falciparum and HBV also parang as a vector, yeah, parang viral vector vaccine to siya. So we include or we inoculate P. falciparum proteins into the HBV na portion of the HBV para atong isulod, okay, parang viral vector. Okay, ayan. And a chemical adjuvant, okay, para mas ma-increase ang immune response. Okay, take note, diba, adjuvants, IS, diba, pampa-increase sa immune response. Okay, alright, ayan. So that's for natural immunity, no? So again, the patient already has this, no, genetic alterations in the RBCs that will help, no, in the non-survival of the parasites inside the RBCs. Okay, alright. Now for summary, again, from Garcia, very important, P-Vivax, take note, enlarged RBCs, young cells, bata, yes, delicate ring, amoeboid trophozoite, okay. Main criteria to, large RBC, sharper dots, but not always present, no? Several phases of growth can be seen in one smear, and gametocytes appear as early as the 3rd day. Okay. For P. malariae, long incubation period, 72 hours. Could be what I said, stippling, pero there could also be Siemens dots, no? Band trophozoite, no? And again, kato, rosette formation of the merozoites, fruit pie arrangement. Ayan. Okay. Alright, sige. And next, you have P. ovale, same siya with P. vivax, trophozoiteless amoeboid, serrated RBCs, and fimbriated edges. Okay, alright, things to remember. And lastly, P. falciparum, of course, No Schaffner dots, Bowers dots ang naa. You have crescent shape, banana shape, sausage shape, gametocytes. Okay? And asa pa man? Siya ang pinaka-early, kaya ang cycle as low as early as 36 hours. Okay? Alright, ayan. So that's for your Plasmodium species. Okay? Alright, ayan. So for the next video, we're going now to continue with the next blood sporozoa. And that is your Babesia, and then finally the last one, your Toxoplasma gondii. Okay? So I'll see you on the next video. Okay? Kapit lang dyan. Laban lang. Kapit naman ba? Okay?